Today on ArtEvolve. My name is Mackenzie Garrity, and I am the CEO of ArtEcheck. And here with me, I have Javier Laramaya, who is one of our condition and risk experts. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Of course. So before we properly jump in and have Javier explain to us, talk to us about interior design, of course, today we're going to be talking about how to transform interior design transit through technology, which is going to be a pretty exciting topic. And in terms of how the Zoom works, right, with all these newfangled buttons added to the bottom, apparently, what I always like to say is that, we're quite chatty here on ArtEvolve. We'd like you to interact with us. So please feel free to pop into the chat at any time. You're also welcome, if you want your question to be answered at the end, to click on the Q&A button and add your question there so we can answer it at the end if it's unrelated to what we're talking about at that moment. But if you have a question or a comment about what we're talking about, please feel free to jump in. I'm also going to use this fancy new raise hand button for some things. So I might ask a question in terms of, who's dealt with this, or has this happened to you, type of thing, right? So feel free to raise your hand in that case. Yeah, that's kind of where we are. So let us get started. So Javi, why don't you just start by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and your background and why you are talking about interior design?
Yeah, of course. So as you said, my name is Javier, and I joined the ArtEcheck team last year. Well, actually this year. I'm counting already 2023. After working for a few years for some shippers and also for all the software also related to the industry. I do have a special passion for this world, not only interior design, but the whole art or like high value items and how they move around the world. I do have a bit of a passion for that. So that is a bit of my background. Before then, I had a major shift of industries and careers because I was doing nothing related to this. So it was a bit of a change, a bit of like, what is this? And after discovering, I do love it every day more.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. And I know, in your previous roles, both working in shipping itself and then in software for shipping, right? Technology for shipping, you dealt with a lot of different interior design firms around the world, right?
That is correct. In my last position, specifically, more than any other, I was one of the coordinators, the moving coordinators for fine art, and that included also, obviously, interior design. And I was more oriented towards the interior design aspect of the business. So I work with quite a few names around and for quite a long time.
Wonderful. So that actually brings me to my first question. So obviously on ArtEvolve, we do spend a lot of time talking about fine art, ArtEvolve fine art, right? With more obvious examples like things like paintings and sculptures and historical items and things. But we don't always go so deeply, right, into the multitude of other objects that our industry handles alongside those sort of traditional ones. So could you first outline for us who in our industry, sort of in the art world, might be working with interior design objects?
I mean, straight out the batch, the first thing that comes to mind is the interior design houses themselves. Like, I think we have over here Logan Killen. Yes, Jen from Logan Killen, for example. They will be the first ones I will always come to think about. But also we can't forget the galleries, museums, the shippers, like the ones I was working with, and of course, private homes, which is also, I think, is the first image that will come to mind when we talk interior design, is a home, a house, a mansion, a flat, something that needs that decoration inside. And they decide to trust the interior designer to help them make a house a home, I'll say.
Yeah, it's quite interesting too, because I think the stereotype that a lot of people have for interior design, right, is, okay, we're going to fill this, mansion in the Hollywood Hills with beautiful things. But in fact, there are so many galleries and museums that also deal with similar pieces either for exhibitions or for their own spaces. So yeah, something kind of, and I'm sure, I think we actually had quite a few museums decide to join us today. So I think that definitely shows kind of the importance in that sector as well. So today we're talking kind of more specifically, not just interior design within the art world, but interior design transit. So how is interior design shipping different from traditional fine art pieces?
Right. So if we're talking about transit in general, for example, I'm going to focus on fine art, which is the first thing that also it's pops in. Is I see an artwork that I like, sculpture, painting, a book, something that I like, and I order it. But I have seen it.
Mhm.
I have the chance to see it, and most of the time, not always, of course, you have it in front of you. In case of museums, obviously they have the piece, so it's a bit easier. With interior design, what I noticed from experience is that many times the items is just seen on a website, and it doesn't have to be a one-off, so it doesn't have to be a special edition. It can be a table from Finland that the
Mhm.
client wants, and they have to order it, but the actual table itself, the object, has not been seen previously. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things that before we install, they have the idea of what it looks like. They think that it will look nice. So that's one of the things. Also, because of that as well, we have things like assembly. Like when
Mhm.
you receive a piece, obviously from IKEA is 1, 2, 3. We don't have any more, but pieces, they can be quite intricate. Like there could be a desk from the 19th century that has been somehow split in pieces, so they need an exact way of assembling it, and they need to be
Mhm.
quite professional about it, because the minimum mistake, as I said before, on an IKEA piece can be kind of sorted. On one of these ones, that can be an issue because it can
Yeah.
damage not only the piece but also the value of it.
Yeah. So in terms of the objects that, you were saying that they're often not seen in advance, I'm sure this also applies to ones that are made to order, right? So
Correct.
there's so many pieces in interior design that are not actually made, or they're sort of handcrafted, right, after they've been ordered. So there's no way that can be seen in advance. Yeah.
Exactly. And that brings me also to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is when
Mm.
we are getting to the installation process. For example, there's many times that even though we have the blueprints for example, the house that I've encountered, a big house in London, and we have the blueprints of the house, but when we arrived there, the stairs then were lower. They were not as high as expected. So, for example, there was a couple of
Mm.
sofas that it brings these problems as well, because they can be the items, as you said, it can be custom made, and that means that can be odd shaped, can be larger than we anticipated. So it can create all of these kind of issues that, if we compare, for example, to the art world, it's a bit more complicated, I'll say. The art
Mm.
world, we know the dimensions, we know the piece. Most of the time, you can see everything, but if it's something that is custom made for interior design, that can bring some other issues when moving it, and also when installing it or even storing it.
Yeah, I also feel like particularly when you're talking about interior design objects that have multiple pieces, right? There's probably 20 different ways you could pack that, right? And so depending on how the shipper decides to pack it could also affect its ability to even enter the location. Yeah.
Exactly. This happens
Yeah.
quite often as well, that a piece comes back, as you said,
Mm.
in 3 pieces, for example. But the packing also, it's way more bulky than the actual piece, and the piece cannot
Mm.
be open unless it's on the room, because it has risk of other things like environmental contamination and
Mm.
scratching, anything. It has to be open in the room, and we like the shipper has received, or the installer has received, specific instructions. It has to be done here and then. But then the crate that it comes in is twice the volume expected, and ouch,
Yeah,
ouch, that cannot be done straight away, and like this.
definitely. Definitely. So yeah, definitely sounds like there are some challenges, right, that can arise during interior design shipping. So let's talk about some of these in a little bit more detail.
Yeah,
What about in terms of planning?
great one. So planning usually it's quite meticulous, and it's actually usually is quite well done, but obviously because we're talking about something that is not going to happen, usually doesn't is not going to happen on the spot. It's not basically I'm going to receive this, I just have to leave it, I just have to take it so I can do the first survey in the house, I can speak to everyone. No, we're talking about some projects that can last months, weeks, months, even years to be finished, to be installed. So in that planning, there's many things that are not specified because it's impossible to know. Like I'm gonna say, arriving in the time of installation and the workers are still there, still working on on carpeting the stairs, for example. Those kind of
Mm,
things are things that we cannot foresee, and it's
hmm.
complicated. Let's say so. The planning, even though both shippers and the interior design houses they work together to kind of get to the best outcome possible. There's many things that cannot be taken into account because it's impossible to know because unfortunately we don't know the future yet.
Yeah, yeah. And I know something that you've talked with me a lot about has been about communication, right? And sort of the massive amount of communication that ends up happening for interior design shipments. So why is that? What do you think is going on there?
So the interior designer would, for example, I'm going to talk from experience on myself, will contact me, hey Javier, you're going to receive this piece, but they don't know when it's going to arrive. And this happens to us when we order something from the internet. We don't know exactly when
Mm,
is it going to arrive. If there's any delays, we are not usually or not often communicated either. Then we're not
mm,
told that, hey, there's a week delay, or all these kind of little things makes you have to go through a whole chain of emails or through a whole load of communication to try and find exactly where is this thing, what is happening, how come I didn't know this. Also keep in mind that we're not talking about in general, we're talking about hundreds if not thousands of pieces that are going to go into a place. So
wow.
it's very, very hard to mentally keep a record of everything that, like, oh yeah, I remember that chair that you told me 5 months ago. No, I don't remember because I have, in the meantime, I have 600 other items arriving or about to arrive. So having to go through all that lot of communication to try and find something specific, it is a
Mhm,
lot. And it can happen that the same as the shipper, which it was mine in my case, the shipping company was working tight, like we couldn't stop working on that, but we can forget things. Same way goes to the interior design house, that suddenly something shows
mm,
up and I call them, hey, I have a table here and I'm not showing this for yours because it doesn't even have a reference number. So I
mm.
cannot actually match it to your records or mine. And they actually have to, again, go back to their own communications, the internal communication, trying to find where that come from. So it's a lot of backtracking and try to get to the right point.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess then if things are sort of arriving over such a long period of time, that must bring up some issues like with questions about storage.
Yes. So
Mm,
keep in mind that like we have I had loads of pieces that they were not fragile but still can be damaged. Everything talking about damage in general, for example, when in terms of storage. So we will be, for example, moving in. Also, unfortunately, the times we live in, the sometimes we find understaffed uh, uh,
mm,
places, understaffed workers, or overworked workers that on a warehouse they would receive 500 items a day, each one for their own
mm,
um, project. So it's hard for them to do the whole thing in one. Like, I need to check this and I need to move it there. It might not happen today. It might happen tomorrow. They're going to protect it at the best possible way. But that also means that when something arrives, sometimes it cannot be checked on spot.
mm. Yeah,
So it's a bit of quite a few issues over that. Okay, there can be quite a few issues coming from that.
yeah. So who is responsible, right? I guess at that point.
Exactly. And I
Mm,
open it now. It arrived a month ago, but I just had the chance to not a month, but I mean arrived 3 days ago, and I just had the chance to open that crate, for example, to look inside, and I look at it, and we've moved the crate because we cannot leave it just there when it arrive somewhere, and it's like, oops, there's a scratch there, or there's something broken.
Yeah.
Who was this? Who did
Or like you
this?
said, you can't actually open it until it's in the room, right? And that could be a couple weeks potentially.
Exactly. That's a couple of weeks. No, it can be weeks, it can be months, it can be years.
Wow.
If it's something that needs to be open in a specific room, in particular, as we said before, that one can bring even more issues than any other.
Wow. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. So let's talk about the point that you do install things, right?
Yes.
So what about any challenges during installation?
Plenty. That's the moment of truth. That usually happens to be the moment of truth. Like, you've been preparing for this project.
That makes sense.
We've been preparing for a year. Now we just found out that we were not as prepared as we wanted. Both sides, not only one or the other. As I said before, one of the things that can happen is, like, you get there and objects that could not be checked before happen to have something that shouldn't be there. Doesn't have to be damaged. Like, it can be just the color. But because we were instructed to not open it until it arrived there, that could be one. The sizing we were saying before. Also, keep in mind that not always, but in many cases, the install site has not been finished. So I have found myself in between workers, as I said, doing the stairs or preparing the rooms and things like that, which also can slow down or inhabilitate the installation as planned. We plan 4 days and it has to happen in 2 weeks, because it is hard to see those things that can happen. Also, the communication between, like, there's no regular updates, let's say, in that sense, but not towards the shipper, even towards the final client. As we know, their own, like, the workers, they can also have their own schedules, and that might be behind schedule, but they're too busy to even say anything and having to go and write an email or call someone, so they just keep going, and that delays the rest. Even though we have, for example, installation plans, it can happen that the specific instructions for something are not there. That means the installer has to call the office, email, find this, the office has to send this, so that also delays even more. It can happen, and it has happened to myself, that a coffee table, emphasis on coffee table, happened to weigh a ton. Not kidding, it was a ton. And we did not have, obviously, we didn't cater for that. And it arrived the day before the installation. So.
And you didn't have the material. Yeah, you didn't have the tools.
Exactly.
Wow.
The tools or the people. Imagine, like, usually I would say for a big piece, 6 people will be able to lift and kind of maneuver. How many people do we need for a ton? And it's a coffee table. So also it's not tiny, but, like, compared to what you would imagine.
Just out of curiosity, what was this coffee table made of?
Marble.
Okay. That makes sense.
Pure marble.
That makes sense.
You would imagine a coffee table being a nice size, like a small size, I'll say, and it was, which means doesn't matter how many men I put, they can't really be all trying to grab it and maneuver it. So that one, for example, is one of them. So it's hard to see all these things, all these, like, last minute or things that could not be catered for before, to see them when you are there. So that it's true that I gotta say that the shippers usually have quite amazing to solve the decisions on the fly. Like, they're usually like, okay, wait a second, this has happened, let's communicate, let's do this. But it's hard. And install day, as I said, is the proof of fire, the ring of fire to go through, like the lions, and any chance you get burned.
Definitely. So I'm curious if what kind of challenges anyone in the audience has run into in terms of interior design, whether that's private or that's commercial, or it's loans between museums for sort of museum grade interior design pieces. So feel free to pitch in the chat. Just make sure you send your message to everyone. You can just click on the little drop down, and it allows you to change it. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear if anyone else has had any other sort of challenges that they've run into, and maybe we can sort of help address that in this particular discussion. So Oh
I was
yeah,
going to
go
say, I
ahead.
can see Beverly has said that we were talking about residential or commercial interior design. It's a bit of both.
Mhm.
So I've worked with both. When I make examples, you might see me focusing more on one or the other, but in general, it applies to both. We've arrived to a
Yeah.
store and the store wasn't finished when we tried to install. So you'll hear me, sorry, putting examples of both or focusing on one other, but it applies to both.
Yeah. The one-ton coffee table, what a surprise. Yes, definitely.
It was a
Definitely.
great surprise for me as well.
I'm sure. So what about after installation? So once something has been installed, are there any challenges that can occur after that point?
So let's think, for example, let's say first that sometimes the installation can happen now, but the final client, actually only sees maybe pictures or some video of it, but they don't actually go
Mhm.
to the property until months later because they've been
Uh,
working, they're so doing the things, and it's a new house. So that's when also many times you can find the interior designer uh, desperate, calling the shipper, this is not correct, the client has just told us this and this and that. So
mhm,
we can find issues on site with the site in general. So this actually was changed and it shouldn't be in this room, which go back to the communication I was saying before, the having to go
mhm,
through everything again. um, there can also happen that there's some damage on certain pieces, and again, going back to the communication problem, which is, it seems like I'm the one I'm focusing on, because who what happened there? Was it the workers after we left? Was it us? Was we were installing and didn't realize or didn't record it properly? What happened? Who did? Or is this even the client that actually has done it and saying that, oh, this was here already and he didn't realize that he actually kicked it for saying something
yeah,
like that? I could come to mind. I don't
right,
know. Like, who did that?
right.
How this did happen? And now we have to go back. As I said, maybe it could be a couple of days, which should be easy. But in general, from what my experience, once again, it's been weeks or months. So again, having to try and backtrack all of that, it's a lot of admin work in the middle.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about now some solutions, right? So what types of technologies do you think can help improve interior design transit?
Right. Before I say the ones I want to mention, I'm also going to ask the chat also to if they can think of anything as well apart from the ones we're saying. Just type it so we can actually talk about it as well. But the first thing, for example, I can think of is this: it's a smartphone. Like,
Mm,
the smartphone will allow for a better communication, like, or a tablet, like a handheld computer, a handheld like computer that can help, um, not only shippers and the interior designer. Many times we order something from the factory, and the shipper that's bringing it to the warehouse, it's something completely independent. And that's when, thank you, Alex, because that was going to be one of my next ones. That's where, for example, the tracking, the GPS,
mm,
can help as well. This has also been, we see it daily in your delivery for the shopping from the grocery store, or you see it when you buy something from places like Amazon. You see where the van is and when is your next turn. All of this could be applying. That would be a deal changer, because deal breaker and changer, because it's like, okay, so where is my table? Okay, so there's a delay and it is actually crossing France as we're talking. So we would kind of
mm.
have more data in that. What we were saying about the planning, for example, in terms of the
Mm,
rooms or the house, 3D rendering software, which
mm. Like
for
CAD,
some,
you mean?
yes, kind of, but let's even put it more simple. It's something that when you say it sounds like, wow, big words. I am a
Hmm.
Spaniard speaking English. Trust me, I'm not a fan of big words myself. So it's not that. We have, even on the iPhones nowadays, we have 3D rendering software, 3D rendering tools that you can do with your own camera,
Mm.
that you can scan a whole room and give a 3D image straight away to, for example, to me that I'm the shipper. And then we can also add those pieces of furniture in 3D over that. So it gives even a more accurate
Wow.
idea, and it takes not much time
Yeah.
doing
And
it.
so then you're not getting those calls, a month later being
Exactly.
like the table, actually, we want it across the room, right?
Exactly. The client can, him or herself or themselves, they can actually move. Oh, actually, this has to go here, and that updates in an like, automatic in lifetime. That I
Yeah.
can think of also like digital measuring as well. I'm going back to the handheld computer. Like I do trust a measure tape, for example, but if we have something that is
Mm-hmm.
already recorded and that it updates automatically, let's say the factory you a custom piece that we were saying before, by having this piece
Mm-hmm.
of software that can measure the things and update straight away, will make life easy for
Mm-hmm.
later. It will solve many other things there. If
Yeah,
I go
sure.
even
And I know there's some interesting like digital measuring programs that allow you to like measure in a 3D space as well,
correct,
right?
correct, and they are available also in platforms like iPhone, like iOS, and
Hmm.
it's included. So it's not saying that something that I have to buy now something else. There's things that also are not like they're not going to be expensive. It's quite cost effective, and they can help. You just need to learn
Mm-hmm.
to adopt and to start using and to convince some to start using them. The technophobic people, in special.
Mm-hmm.
But once we get to that, it's going to be much easier. From the top of my head, even something even simpler, Mackenzie, video,
Hmm.
a video of
Yeah.
the
Well,
place,
yeah,
and
I
that
could see
video
that.
exactly. I literally can see it. I send that straight away to the interior designer. The interior designer send it to the final client. The client gives the the green light. We're done. If there's any issues later, the interior designer can actually go back and say, "Agree, but you already approved this, so I'm gonna have to add a bit of." I'm gonna talking about, for example, business wise. They can come back
Mm-hmm.
and say, "Oh, but that's not included now. That's an extra because you give us an okay on this." So it's a bit also covering the backs. The shipper can say exactly the
Hmm.
same. Um, Digital sensors inside of like crates and things like that.
Yeah. Like
I'm
Alex
sure.
was saying, it's with tracking as well, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was thinking about the tracking as the GPS that I was mentioning, but this
some of the
also involves
sensors have GPS in them as too. So yeah.
exactly. And I believe I have heard about like specific sensors as well. There are a couple of companies are using already that not only, as you say, not only give you the positioning of the track or the item, but also tells you like the old fashioned stickers with the sand inside. This has been moved. This has been done. So you know
Mm.
exactly that it has to be this side up, and that side is kept up the entire journey.
Okay. So if you have something that can't be turned over, then the digital sensor will tell you if that's happened. Right.
Exactly, straight away, and on real time as well can happen, or updated later, so we know exactly that on transit at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, this this had a tumble. What happened there? We can
Mm-hmm.
also investigate that.
Yeah. I feel
Talking of
like so many interior design objects too, like much more than in the typical fine art world, are made of materials like glass, right?
glass, very
So
delicate or special woods. There
mm.
is leather. There's quite a few materials that are, again, I'm going back to the same one. It's not the IKEA materials.
Yeah, sure, sure.
They tend to be way more expensive and delicate, and they need proper
That
and
makes
special
sense.
care.
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking about houses, for example, the
Mm,
houses or shops or businesses, it can happen that, and especially, for example, in countries like the UK where we are, um,
mm.
humidity is not right on a room,
Oh,
but we don't know that, and we put
not your friend.
exactly, and we put this
Mm,
wooden table with special coats and that now suddenly it's bumpy. It has bumps from the mold or even just the humidity inside. How can we
mm,
also see that? We know that they already exist. Environmental, I think it's called environmental sensors.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Like what
This
museums use,
yes,
you mean?
correct,
Mm,
correct. It's like
okay.
kind of like controlling the atmosphere inside that room, not controlling, but measuring. So
Measuring
it
it.
can, exactly. So today we're in summer, so we're fine, but then the winter is coming and we get an alarm, for example, until the whole thing has been okayed by the client for a sample. I'm just making an example there. And it's like, oh, wait a second, interior designer, hey, we've seen this, and do you think it would be safer if we go and cover this? So it's offering also that, or
Yeah.
even before installing, they can also be
Well, and I
saying,
actually know some shippers who have just like they have like the handheld sensors for those things that they can bring into
correct,
a space, right? And actually just quickly check what the
correct,
environment is.
correct. And again, if we are looking for something that is also going to be quite cost effective, I have one that I have
Mm,
one for myself, and
fair.
then exactly, and it was in my case. Obviously, mine is not a professional or anything like that, but it works. It does the trick, and it was almost nothing in Amazon. So it's
Yeah.
not something that also is gonna be like too costly or anything like that. It can
Right.
be, depends on that.
Right.
Now,
It's like a huge value add, right? Without needing to add too much
exactly,
cost. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So it helps saving for later, which is
Mm-hmm.
also what we all try to think about as well. Now,
Yeah.
in thinking about more technology in terms of, for example, approvals and green lights that we were saying, all of these ones were related as well. But what about signing on the screen?
Mm.
I'm here right now. Look at this. Is this okay? Yeah, signed. That is officially done or is officially closed.
Yeah, I've heard issues with like, the paperwork, that piece of paperwork, the final signatures tend to be on like actual physical paper a lot, right? And then
Yes,
they take like days to get into the system, if not weeks. So those finals approvals are not actually official until that actually happens.
exactly.
So,
Even
yeah.
from myself, from what I used to do, I found myself sometimes even trying to keep up. But if you have many projects, you end up with a pile of paper like this to scan,
Mhm.
to then get into there, to then and you need to first attend the other side
Yeah.
than that one. So it can it can go missing as well. It can just happen that,
Mm,
oh, this was
I
scanned
bet.
already, and we have more issues there. Well, if we have a sign on screen, that is already on the record. First of all,
Yeah.
we don't need the paper. Second, saves work for one, and also saves like after work, like things that we're gonna may have to do later if we don't know if it's been approved or not.
Right.
All of these out of the way.
Right. So you were talking, like, obviously a lot of what you're talking about is communication. And so you were talking about like long email chains and phone calls and things like that that are going on. So what about something like online workspaces, like shared online workspaces?
Ooh, that's the dream.
Mm,
That is the dream. Like if I can create a folder that I can add you and the client and the work the foreman of the workers, and I can add anyone I need
hmm
information from or send information to, and they can just go in the phone or in the computer. It's like, oh well, okay, so I guess we're doing this tomorrow then. Oh, actually, this is not arriving. So that would be ideal. That would be
mm,
amazing. Like the amount of
yeah,
work and admin I will save, it's like noticeable to say the least.
yeah. So, okay, so let's talk about some of these items that we just discussed in a little bit more detail in terms of like the process of sort of
Yeah,
implementing them. So I think we sort of talked about smartphones and tablets a little bit, and the 3D software, but why don't we start with sensors? So the digital sensors in movement, right? I mean, I think a big part of that is just about the thing is you won't know what happens until afterwards, right? With a lot of those sensors, even if you get the information in real time, you can't do anything about it. So how does that help? Like, what does that sort of do for the process?
so I mean, it will reduce risk first of all
Mm,
because yeah, I can do nothing when I see that that table is being shoved to the side, and yeah, I can do nothing at the moment, but I have a record that has happened. So imagine
Mm-hmm.
that table is one of those that cannot be opened until it arrives someplace. I'm just giving you an example. When it arrives
Yep.
someplace and I can see exactly where is the damage and how it happened inside the box without having even open the
Mm-hmm.
box, sorry, I can go back to my tracking, to my record, and say, oh, actually, this happened whilst it was on its way from Portugal to London.
Mm-hmm.
And you have
Sure.
details that will allow on that. And they tend to be very accurate. They tend to be very,
Okay. So in terms of liability, right? Who is
exactly.
liable for it?
Exactly. I don't have to have issues with my insurer. The I don't have to have a headache trying to find out what it happens. I can see it.
Mm. And so would that also help with, like, for example, if you knew that something was flipped over and back, would that also change how you opened it?
Most likely, yes. Most likely,
Mm.
depending on the content of the Creator. But yeah, because obviously we already have a notification. We already know that we can expect something. So we need to be extra careful in case
Right.
something actually has broken inside and it can fall whilst I'm opening. Like the people who have the experience, the art handlers or the people who are going to install it, they already know how to deal with these things if they are notified in advance. If I tell them that crate,
Mm-hmm.
be careful, be very careful, and they know exactly how to open it in a sense or how to handle it. So whatever has happened is not going to be like it's not going to be major. It's just going to be as it is. They need how to handle.
Yeah.
So the instructions will
Not
change.
going to cause
Hopefully,
more issues.
thank you. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thinking about like the smartphones and the tablets and things and the shared online workspaces, I'm sure that there's like a connection between those two in terms of how the process would work, right?
The
So if you have access to the shared workspace wherever you are,
Yeah,
how might that change sort of the process that's followed?
I mean, keep in mind that would be if we have that shared workspace with real time notifications
Mm-hmm.
or messages. If I have any doubts, I can go in there straight away. I don't have to follow a chain back. I don't have to call the office,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't have to call the designer, or they don't have to call the client. If the information is there and everyone can see it, now I'll
Mm-hmm.
say it's human. Whatever delay it is now proper human, as in my phone is on the table and I have to look at it for 5 minutes. Okay, so it's 5 minutes, not 2 days, because we have to require approval. We require the client has never seen that there. How are we gonna know? All is in there. The client only
Mm-hmm.
has to pick up the phone, open the computer, get the tablet, and take a look at it.
Sure. So I mean, that's probably something just as simple as using like Google Drive, right? Just having a folder where you
Correct.
have all of everything that's shared together rather than an email chain. Yeah.
Exactly. And on that way, we will minimize any risk of not only errors, but damage, misplaced things. Like the risk will be
Mm.
minimal because, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there will be still things that don't go all the way to perfection. But instead of 10
Sure.
out of 100, we'll get one. And it will be easy to
Yeah.
see where the mistake was as well. So it's it's the risks, they will be minimized to almost zero.
Mm. Okay. Interesting. So you mentioned video before as sort of being like, a simple technology, but that could make big differences. So obviously, at Architect, video is pretty important to us. We care a lot about that in terms of conditions. So can you talk about that for interior design?
Yeah, of course. So when I was mentioning, for example, for example, no, when I was mentioning the video as being one of the most basic, if let's put you in the situation that I explained before, understaffed, overworked, and they don't have
Mm.
the physical time to, for example, open the box straight away and check everything with pictures, details, and everything. Okay, take a minute and make a video. Open, record a video all around. So you have at least you have an idea, a general idea of how it looks. And when you actually have the time to condition report it properly, if you didn't have before, you at least say, oh, this scratch, it wasn't on the video. Only for some, this is a start. If we're talking about moving, I can take a quick video of the item before leaving the warehouse. I can take a quick video being loaded. I can take a video being offloaded, being carried, being installed and installed. So the whole process can be streamlined in a way that it's easier for everyone to go back. Instructions, Mackenzie, instructions of how to assemble something, isn't it? I'm a visual learner, so maybe it's just me, but I'd rather see it than having to read about it, because seeing it,
that's true.
It's going to make it easier for anyone. For anyone, obviously, when I say minimal experience in terms of assembly of that specific object, they're going to understand how to do it. Like the designer is going to see where it is, how it's looking, and the client is going to see his house or their house, sorry, completely done or have done, or it sees an evolution as well. So it's instant communication as well. If it makes things easier. It makes, again, going back to, I keep repeating the word, but like going back to risk, it's minimizing risk as well. We don't have to.
What about for museum grade objects, right? In terms of those instructions, because you were saying like a 19th century desk, right? That like if you put one piece wrong, then it could actually collapse. So I'm guessing video helps in those cases, especially.
Exactly. That's what I mentioned about, like, people. I put myself first because I'm a visual learner. If I look at a PDF with instructions, first of all, I have to have the phone here. I have to be kind of like, where's this piece? What is the? Well, if I have a video, I see the piece. I see where it goes. I have way more visual clues as to how to do it, how to. As we know, for example, like a painting, there's only X amount of ways of hanging a painting. But if I have the one that one requires on video, and even if you haven't done it many times or you were unsure, it's there. There's no pictures, which help, but there's no text. There's a video. You are seeing what's happening. It's easier to recreate.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think I definitely have issues, even with like the pictures, right? If you have an installation booklet, still it's not the actual object.
18 screws, size 12, and you have 15 different screws. It's like, wait, which one is this?
No. Yeah. Now, obviously, I am talking IKEA furniture in this case, but still, I'm sure the same applies, when you're still looking at some really complicated pieces.
Exactly. Any of them, you see there's two shelves that seem exactly the same size, but actually no, because one goes on the right, the other one goes on the left, and they are thinner or they are a bit wider, but it's not noticeable straight away like first look. It's not really noticeable unless you put them on top of each other and things like that. With this video capability, for example, we can see where this one actually goes, where that one goes, and it makes things easier, it makes things quicker, and it makes things less risky.
Definitely. So, I think now, obviously we could probably keep talking about technology for ages and ages, but I'd be interested to know if anybody in the audience has questions or comments about what we've been talking about. If you have any questions about, or specific scenarios that you've run into that you're wondering if there's some technology out there that can help kind of support that concern. Anybody, please pop it into the chat, pop it into the Q&A, wherever you want to put it. We'll take it. And just give you a minute while we talk about, I'm waiting for you. If you have anything you'd like to ask.
I'm trying to find the comment about the residential commercial. Beverly, if you have any question about the commercial, or any comments about the commercial sites, because I know I focus way more on residential, but if you have any, please also put them on the chat, and we'll take a look at them now. Or any questions we can answer now.
Yeah, and Javi, could you get me that link as well?
The link, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Joe's asking, do you have an installation project template that you use? And like, that's interesting. So Joe, just to clarify, do you mean, or maybe Javi, a timeline?
So in my case, for example, the timeline was given. It was agreed by both the interior designer and ourselves as the shipper.
Mm,
But it's not always the case. Is sometimes it's we just been given this has to happen in 4 months. Can you do it? Yes. Very rarely will happen in the 4 months. I gotta say, the way things work at the moment, it will. We'll try, but it's not an actual timeline or a template because the plans, for example, used to the timeline is different. As I said, is agreed. The actual project template or project how the project is going to work when things are arriving and everything usually gets dictated to us, the shipper, what I was, by the interior designer and obviously the provider, the
mm,
suppliers of whatever items were coming.
mm.
So it's
Yeah.
varies a bit.
Yeah, in terms of sort of organizing the installation itself, though, I think there's definitely different softwares that you can use for that organization. In terms of project management, something that we really like to use at Articheck is called ClickUp. And that's actually something that's helpful because it kind of shows the time, right? So it shows you, it does what's called a Gantt chart, which essentially shows in color blocks across a calendar when things will be traveling, right? When things arrive, when is the installation happening, right? So you can sort of see it in like a really visual way. Um, yeah, yeah.
Uh, uh,
Um,
oh, sorry, I was just
go
also going
ahead.
to say like there's also software there already. There's quite a few pieces of software that already exist. For example, for these like timelines and to keep everything in one side and don't having to go back a lot, even though, as I said, still things have to change. We have.
Mm,
I used to use Moveware. Uh, Moveware also includes a bit of everything, and for project management, it's amazing. It's incredible. The capabilities of it, everything is on one side, on one single place. So check it out as well because it will be great.
yeah, so I'll just pop this in here for you, Joe. Let's see, this is Moveware, and we're actually working on something with them now, cooking up an integration. So that's going to be
Correct.
interesting. Yeah, so that's yeah, but we have sort of, vetted their platform and it works quite well. And Javier used to be with them. Also, I would say in terms of let's see. So in terms of organizing things just from like an instructional perspective, we actually have that built into Articheck in terms of like installation instructions and packing checks and things like that. Um, yeah, so I think what we're going to do now, let's see, do we have any other questions come through? Let me just pop up. Oh, let's see, I had another question for you, Javi, which
Yeah,
was in terms of, let's see, um, so obviously from a condition reporting perspective, when do things tend to
yeah.
get checked for interior design?
So there might be some suppliers, and I have the past suppliers that they will check it right after the factory because usually not usually, many of these pieces tend to be, as you said, custom made or specifically made when ordered. Uh, Sometimes they do check it then, many times they don't. And the first time that it gets checked is when it arrives at the warehouse where it's going to be stored for X amount of time
Mm,
until they install.
mm,
What happens then?
mhm.
Going back to what I said before, I might not have the time right now, and I actually have to move it from where it was left to a racket in the warehouse. And when I get to it, there's damage. What? How does it happen? It's been here sitting, yeah, but it wasn't straight away checked.
Yeah,
Now,
that makes sense.
let's say that there was no damage when we check it, then the next time it will be checked is once it is already at the house and usually installed. So
Yeah.
all that time is in the middle. They're kind of overseen, not always, but in general, from experience, they were overseen because they could not be done in a quick manner and efficiently.
Yeah. So in terms of, obviously as a condition and risk expert, I'm just going to put up, this is like one of Javi's meeting links. So if anybody's interested in talking to him about this further, more than happy to have a with you.
It's weird.
Oh,
there we go.
hi.
Something
Yeah, I'm
happened
not
there.
quite sure what happened there. Something happened,
No
but we're
idea.
back.
Sorry.
No, I was just, let's see. Did you see me put that into the chat or did it not show up?
You're breaking
It did.
up.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just saying that I posted your link in the chat in case anyone wants to have a discussion with you about condition and risk for interior design. I said that you're friendly. You're happy to, just have a discussion. Questions after this webinar. Questions. Last one. Would you consolidate delivery country, which is more economical?
Sorry, I cut a little bit of that. Would I consolidate, you said?
You can see it. It's in the Q&A. It's, would you consolidate in collection country or delivery country? What's more economical?
Let me see. Country. Usually on delivery, it's already, if you using one shipper in particular, usually it's already consolidated. So they will wait for everything to get there, and then they will organize based on what they have there. Collection, it will depend probably on the country where it's coming from and how many pieces. If we're talking about, for example, from London, where I was working, if we are looking at, for example, Paris, collection in Paris or around Paris, it was easy to consolidate because there's many other clients that are gonna get things from there. It doesn't need to be even also interior design only, but we have all the clients that will get things from there. If you're going to bring something from somewhere, and I'm making this up, like from Turkey, that would be a bit more complicated. Can be done. It can be done, but usually gets a bit avoided because those consolidations are not going to be probably done by the actual shipper. It will be a third party, and it can happen to save time and also to be able to consolidate it, that it could be also mixed with household goods, which is not ideal depending on what it is. But if it's a country where usually if someone hires someone in London to do the project, that means they're going to be buying from Europe and close enough that it's quite good to consolidate, and it's easy.
Right. Okay, very interesting. So thank you, Javier, for joining me today.
Thank you.
And of course, we're very happy to have you as a condition risk expert. So anyone feel free to reach out to Javi if you have questions about interior design and risk and all those types of things. He sort of worked in all sides of it. And thank you very much for kind of talking about this with me today.
No worries. Thank you all
thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.